What began as a routine press stop for one of Hollywood's most iconic actors quickly unraveled into one of the most uncomfortable and unforgettable moments ever aired on live television. Harrison Ford, the enduring legend behind Han Solo and Indiana Jones, stepped onto the set of The View, expecting the usual questions, the same recycled praise, and a few harmless jabs. But what he got instead was an ambush disguised as an interview. The studio lights glared down, casting hard shadows on the polished desk as he settled into the familiar chair. Ford had been through countless press junkets. This should have been easy. Instead, it was a spark that lit a blaze. Before the cameras even finished their opening pan, Joy Behar greeted him with a thin smile and sharper words. "Well, look, who's here?" she said, her tone sugary and acidic all at once. "The man who's built a legacy on playing one character with different costumes. Harrison Ford." Everybody, a few chuckles from the audience, more out of confusion than amusement, broke the silence. Ford offered a polite smile, but his eyes narrowed just slightly. This wasn't what had been agreed upon. His publicist, standing just off stage, visibly tensed. She had made it clear in the pre-show briefings that the tone should stay light, respectful, focused on the film. But Joy had other plans. "I think you might be mistaking me for someone else," Ford said calmly. "I've played a wide range of roles, some loud, some quiet, but all with purpose." His voice held steady, the cadence deliberate. He was deflecting, gracefully, but Joy wasn't interested in grace. "Really?" she smirked, leaning forward with mock curiosity. "Let's see. Grumpy space pilot. Grumpy archaeologist. Grumpy cop. Seems like a bit of a typecast streak, doesn't it?" Her words danced, on the edge of insult, daring him to push back. The tension that followed was immediate and electric. Even the audience, used to high-spirited back and forths, sensed this wasn't typical banter. One of the co-hosts attempted a weak laugh, but it died halfway out of her throat. Ford glanced around, seeking a lifeline from the other hosts. None came. He returned his gaze to Joy. "I came here to talk about my new film," he said evenly, a warning tucked beneath his words. "Not to relitigate the last 50 years of my career through your narrow lens." But Joy wasn't finished. "Oh, relax," she said, brushing him off with a theatrical wave. "I'm just saying what a lot of people are thinking. When was the last time you actually challenged yourself? Or are you too comfortable playing grumpy old men now?" That was when something in Ford's expression changed. It wasn't rage. Not yet. But something deeper, something colder. He sat back in his chair, folded his arms, and replied, "I've worked with some of the greatest minds in this industry, played roles that mattered to millions. I don't need validation from someone who makes a living tearing others down on daytime television." The silence that followed was deafening. Joy's face flushed. She had been expecting a defensive actor, a rattled guest, not this. But she doubled down. "Is that what you think I do?" she asked, voice rising. "Gossip that I don't ask? Real questions? You think you're above this show? I think I'm above baseless mockery." He fired back, and frankly, so should your audience be. The audience shifted in their seats. The tension in the air had stopped being uncomfortable. It was now explosive. One of the producers in the control room whispered into a headset, debating whether to cut to commercial, but the cameras kept rolling. Joy leaned in again. "You think you're untouchable, don't you? You've been coasting on nostalgia and box office receipts for decades, and now someone holds up a mirror and you can't take it." Ford stood, slowly and purposefully, the sound of his chair scraping against the floor echoing through the studio. Like thunder, he stared her down, and in that moment, it was clear. Harrison Ford wasn't acting. "You think you're holding up a mirror. All I see is a spotlight you use to shine on everyone but yourself. Sit down," Joy snapped. "This is my show. You don't get to storm off just because you're offended by a little honesty." "Your show," he said quietly, almost to himself. "What a sad little kingdom you rule, tearing down the people who've built something real." The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. The conviction in them landed harder than any scream. Around the set, even the camera operators looked visibly uncomfortable. Ford turned back to the hosts. "If I'm grumpy," he said with a smirk, "at least I'm paid to pretend." Joy launched out of her chair, clearly unprepared for this kind of resistance. She pointed a finger in his face. "You think you're better than me, don't you? You think because you played a few heroes in movies that makes you a hero in real life." Ford didn't blink. "No, but I don't mistake sarcasm for journalism either. You're a has-been," she barked. "Everyone knows it. You're clinging to past glory and praying someone still cares." Ford's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. For a brief second, a flash of real pain passed over his face. The kind of pain that only comes from recognizing a grain of truth twisted into a cruel blade. But what came next wasn't defeat. It was resolve. "My best days behind me," he repeated slowly. "When were yours, Joy? Was it during that short-lived sitcom? Or maybe that failed stand-up tour that tanked harder than your credibility?" A few audience members gasped audibly. Joy stepped back, stunned. But Ford wasn't done. "You built your career on tearing people down. And yet, you hide behind this table like it's a shield from accountability. You think you're invincible because you sit with other voices who validate your bitterness. But the truth is you're just afraid. Afraid that if you weren't criticizing others, no one would listen to you at all. Joy's mouth opened, but the words wouldn't come. Not yet. Another host finally tried to intervene. Let's all take a breath. Don't. Ford interrupted, still staring at Joy. Don't try to sanitize this. Let it breathe. Let people see what daytime television really is. Joy tried to recover, snarling, you want to play psychologist now. Analyze me like I'm some character in your dusty scripts. No, Ford said, leaning forward. But I do know that happy people don't dedicate their lives to making others feel small. Joy flinched, but quickly masked it with rage. You don't know a damn thing about my life. I know enough, he said flatly. Enough to know this isn't about me. It's about your bitterness. It always has been. She laughed bitterly. You think you're clever? You think the world needs more grumpy old actors with inflated egos? No, Ford said, but it could use a few less bitter hosts, pretending that cruelty is courage. She was speechless, just for a second. But it was enough. Enough for the camera to catch it. Enough for the audience to feel it. Ford slowly sat down again, calmer now, like a storm that had passed only to leave wreckage in its wake. You want ratings, Joy, he said. Congratulations, you got them. Joy, Behar sat frozen, the words still ringing in her ears. Ford's voice had dropped to a low simmer, but the fire hadn't left his eyes. There was no cue card, no script, no PR safety net left to catch her. For the first time in her long career, she wasn't in control of the room, and it showed. I don't need this, she muttered, looking toward the producers. But they weren't coming to her rescue. The control booth was chaos. No one dared cut the feed knot now. This wasn't a train wreck. It was a reckoning. Harrison leaned in, but his voice was calm, now disturbingly calm. You asked when I last challenged myself, he said, watching her closely. Let me ask you, when was the last time you challenged yourself to show compassion? Joy scoffed, arms crossed. Don't lecture me. You show up here, throw a tantrum on national television, and expect to be applauded for it. Didn't throw a tantrum, he replied. I responded. There's a difference. And the applause, that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I care about the work, about the people who watch it, the ones who deserve better than what you're giving them. She laughed a hollow sound, desperate. Please, save the sanctimonious garbage. You Hollywood types love pretending you're some kind of moral compass, when really, you just want more screen time. Ford tilted his head. Maybe, or maybe I just don't want to sit quietly while someone reduces decades of craft into a punchline. The studio was silent again. The audience, unsure of where this would go next, had all but stopped breathing. Joy looked around at her co-hosts for backup, but their faces had drained of color. Whoopi stared at the desk. Sarah shifted in her seat, eyes wide and silent. Sonny wouldn't even make eye contact. No one was stepping in. You're not the hero, Harrison, Joy said through clenched teeth. You're just another overpaid celebrity throwing a fit because someone dared to tell you the truth. Ford chuckled. Nod kindly. You mean your version of the truth. You think you're speaking for the people, don't you? But all I see is a woman so wrapped up in being right that she's forgotten how to be decent. Decent, she barked, eyes flashing. Don't talk to me about decency. You're the one who just insulted me, my career, my work on my own show. You insulted yourself, he said simply. I just stopped pretending not to notice. That hit harder than anything else, he'd said, her jaw tightened. You think you're untouchable. No one's untouchable, he answered, but there's a difference between being challenged and being hunted. This was a trap. You wanted to humiliate me because you thought it would make good TV. Maybe it did, but it also showed the world exactly who you are. Joy stood again, her voice rising. You don't get to judge me. Not here, not like this. But I do, Ford said, because for the last 20 minutes you've judged me, my work, my worth, my relevance. You came for me with claws out. You wanted a spectacle. Well, congratulations, you got it. Joy shook her head, speechless. Her hands trembled, and her lips parted, but no sound came. Ford, still seated, stared her down, like a statue carved out of quiet fury. You don't scare me, she whispered finally. I'm not trying to scare you, he replied. I'm trying to show you the mirror, the one you haven't looked into in a long time. For the first time, Joy's composure cracked. Just a flicker, but it was enough. Enough for the audience to see it. Enough for the hosts to shift in their seats. Enough for Ford to see that behind all that bluster was something he recognized. Pain, he softened, just slightly. I don't hate you, Joy, he said, but I hate what this show has become. What you've become. I hate that we've reached a point where cruelty is currency, and someone's humanity is considered collateral damage for a few extra views. The silence was complete now. Even the crew had stopped moving. Ford stood slowly. Joy, stunned, stepped back. You think this moment defines me? No, Ford said, but it reveals you. She didn't move, didn't speak, just watched as Harrison Ford picked up his coat, nodded at the stunned co-hosts, and walked toward the edge of the set. Then he stopped one last time and turned back. I came here because I thought I'd be speaking with professionals, he said, but I've had more respectful conversations with late-night Uber drivers than I had sitting at this table. He let that sit, then walked off the set. For a few agonizing moments, no one moved. Then Joy slowly turned to the camera, her voice small. "We'll be right back," she said. But they wouldn't. Not really. Because what had just happened couldn't be undone. It couldn't be edited, polished, or forgotten. It was live. It was raw. And it was devastating. Later that day, the internet exploded. Clips of the confrontation were uploaded, dissected, and debated. Headlines swarmed like vultures. Harrison Ford destroys Joy Behar on live TV. The View implodes daytime disaster, or necessary reckoning. Public opinion was split. Some praised Ford's honesty. Others defended Joy's right to ask tough questions. But one thing was certain: nobody was talking about the film he came to promote. Producers at The View issued a brief statement, calling the incident unfortunate and promising to reflect on the show's tone moving forward. But it didn't stop the backlash. Sponsors called. PR teams scrambled. Damage control was in full swing. Joy went quiet for 3 days. No tweets, no appearances. Then finally, she returned to the show with a short monologue. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She simply said, "Things got heated, but sometimes that's what happens when people care." Ford, for his part, declined interviews. When asked about the incident by a reporter on a red carpet weeks later, he simply smiled and said, "Sometimes truth gets loud." But behind the scenes, executives were shaken. Media analysts agreed it was one of the most watched and talked about moments in the show's history. And yet, it left a bitter taste. Not just because of the words exchanged, but because of what it exposed. The deep fissures between celebrity and media, performer and critic, humanity and performance. And somewhere out there, in households across the country, viewers sat in stunned silence. Some cheered. Some winced. All of them remembered. In the end, it wasn't just about a movie, or a talk show, or two strong personalities clashing on daytime TV. It was about something bigger, something raw. A reminder that even behind the glossy lights and practiced smiles, real people still bleed when cut. That respect, genuine, human respect, isn't owed, but it is essential, and that maybe, just maybe, the most important thing a person can say in the middle of chaos is, enough.